But let's start by hearing from Vice President JD Vance on Europe and civilisational suicide.
That is the cradle of Western civilization. The entire idea of Christian civilization that led to the founding of the United States of America, that was formed in Europe. Europe is at risk, I think, of engaging in civilizational suicide. They are unable to or unwilling, too many countries, to control their borders. You see them starting to push back against that, and good, that's a good thing. You see them starting to limit the free speech of their own citizens, even as those citizens are protesting against things like the border invasion that got Donald Trump and a number of European leaders elected. So look, I want Europe to thrive. I want them to be an important ally. Part of that is going to be Europe respecting its own people, respecting its own sovereignty, and America can't do that job for them. If you have a country like Germany, where you have another few million immigrants come in from countries that are totally culturally incompatible with Germany, then it doesn't matter what I think about Europe. Germany will have killed itself, and I hope they don't do that, because I love Germany and I want Germany to thrive.
Josh is talking about the strange death of Europe. I think I read a good book about that. The suicidal stupidity of European leaders who have forsaken their own populations, their own countries, but expect the US, and that includes US taxpayers, to step in and protect them.
Rita, I don't think that I heard a single word there that JD Vance is wrong about, frankly. I mean, I'm not sure that I love Germany as much as he does, frankly, but I mean, other than quibbling there, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong at all with what we just heard. I mean, Europe has been committing cultural, economic suicide. They've been committing basically every form of suicide that a nation state can commit. And part of that is because they don't actually think of themselves as nation states. I mean, that's kind of the problem in the first place there. I mean, going all the way back to the Maastricht Treaty in Europe in the early 1990s, which was the predecessor to the modern European Union, you know, Europe really went hook, line, and sinker in the post-Berlin Wall, post-Cold War era. They really went hook, line, and sinker down the rabbit hole of post-nationalism, the idea of transnationalism, that we're all going to be just one continent, one economy, heck, one currency while we're out there. Let's have the Eurozone. Let's have a common currency, one central bank. What could possibly go wrong with this picture here? But when you start going down that rabbit hole, Rita, you start treating all commodities and all human beings as one and the exact same thing. You're bringing in people from the hostile cultures that have nothing to do with your history there. You inevitably are going to lose any sense of nationhood in the first place there. So then you kind of combine that with these free speech censorship regimes. It's very, very, very dark stuff. And it's about time that someone is trying to put Europe in their place. It's trying to remind them, frankly, of what they were and what they could be again. It's kind of a friendly nudge from a former and hopefully soon to be again fulsome ally that Europe desperately needs. I'm not sure they're going to listen, Rita, but hopefully they do.
Josh, let's look at some polling data, and there's no other way to put it. These are disastrous figures for the Democrats. Their favourability rating has dropped to a record low, according to CNN polling. CNN, folks, among the American public overall, the Dems' favourability rating is at just 29%. And what's interesting, Josh, is that even among Democrat voters, there is just great dissatisfaction. The approval rating there is low, and the majority believe the party's headed in the wrong direction.
Well, there's multiple reasons for thinking that, right? I mean, first of all, just look at the fact that this party just simply cannot give up on its cultural militants. They cannot give up on their woke culture war they have been waging against the American people for years and years, arguably decades now. We saw that just at Trump's joint presidential address to the Congress about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago or so. They literally couldn't be bothered to get off their butts to applaud for Peyton McNabb, this high school girl who suffered traumatic brain injury because of a biological male. They couldn't be bothered to get off their butts to applaud for the family of Lake and Riley, who was tragically murdered by an illegal alien who had no business whatsoever being in the United States. They're consistently taking radical positions. I mean, the transgender sports issue was literally an 80-20 issue. And even when you have someone like Gavin Newsom, who we obviously should not believe what he says, but when he's trying to stake out, at least rhetorically, purportedly, a moderate stance there, he is immediately shot down by party elites there. By the way, Rita, they're also tearing apart the seams. I mean, look at this at the CR that just passed the Congress this past Friday there. I mean, Chuck Schumer leading a brigade of 9 Democrats voting alongside Senate Republicans there. He's being chewed out by Hakeem Jeffries in the U.S. House there. I mean, even these Democratic leaders from the same state, heck, from the same borough. They're both from Brooklyn. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are both Brooklyn boys, and they're openly fighting on the national stage there to shut down the government, to not shut it down. So they're not on the same page. They're taking radically unpopular issues. The party's a veritable dumpster fire, frankly, and they have no one to blame for this whatsoever other than themselves.
And there's more bad news for lefties everywhere, including Bill Maher, who seems to think that Trump voters are all having massive amounts of regret at the moment. Watch this exchange between him and Batia Unga-Sargon, who will be on the program later in the week. This just shows you how divorced from reality so many lefties are, even supposedly sensible ones like Bill Maher.
I'm just wondering what you think now. We're approaching 2 months in. I mean, you must have a feeling in your gut. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't, that this is really going badly and I shouldn't have thrown my lot in with this team.
Oh, no, I feel the opposite.
All right.
But Josh, let's look at the data that's just come out earlier today from NBC News. 3 months into his second term, President Trump has hit his highest ever approval rating. And Josh, more Americans say the country is in the right track than at any other point in the last 21 years, since 2004. And that is incredible given the relentless negative media.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. So in some polling, Trump's approval rating has slipped at least a little bit relative to his highs on January 20th. But Rita, the thing that you have to bear in mind here is that Donald Trump started the presidency with what for contemporary American politics is actually like sky high approval ratings there. He basically had the highest approval rating on day one of his presidency that he had for his entire term there. Some current polls show that he has maintained that level of support. Some show that it slipped a little bit, but it's still actually very, very high relative to the past few presidents there. I mean, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, these were not particularly highly approved presidencies. So even relatively speaking there, Donald Trump is completely swimming in high waters here. Then you compare it to the Democratic Party approval rating that you and I were just talking about. I mean, Donald Trump is at this point orders of magnitude more popular than the Democratic Party. And there's a reason for that, Rita, which is that his policies are common sense policies. I mean, over the weekend, the big spat here in the United States was this separation of power showdown between Donald Trump and this puny little judge in Washington, D.C., purporting to say that you cannot deport these Tren de Aragua horrific transnational criminal gangbangers and these rapists and murderers and thugs there. Guess what? That's popular. Deporting thugs, deporting gangbangers, rapists, murderers, that happens to be actually very popular with the American people. Deporting someone like Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University, someone who is here on a green card, who's not even a U.S. citizen, who's openly espousing the Hamas-Hezbollah party line, deporting him, that's popular. So the Democrats, again, whether it's the transgender issue, whether it's this, they just continue to take unpopular positions. Donald Trump just does the commonsensical thing because he has this whole MAGA coalition, this coalition of the common sense. It's not an ideologically right-wing coalition. It's just a coalition that wants to do the simple median American sentiment there. And that's why he's so popular right now.
Well, you mentioned that judge and the Democrats, the media, are constantly bleating about a constitutional crisis, Donald Trump causing a constitutional crisis. But it seems the crisis is from these activist judges. And the one you just mentioned, essentially trying to subvert the will of the people, the president's power. Tell me about this U.S. district judge issuing a 14-day restraining order to prevent a deportation of these criminals. And the Trump administration has just ignored it and has sent these people to El Salvador. Let's have a look at some vision of them arriving in El Salvador, where they're going to serve their prison terms, and it's going to cost the American taxpayer considerably less, Josh.
So 3 cheers for the Trump administration here. Hip, hip, hooray. I love how they have handled this spat with the judge. I love how they have handled this operation in general here. So Donald Trump invoking a seldom used 1798 statute called the Alien Enemies Act, literally goes back to the John Adams presidency, essentially giving him slightly more power than he normally has when it comes to expediting removals for certain types of aliens here who are essentially at war with the country. And I think this, Rita, is probably where the left is disagreeing with President Trump. They're saying that, oh, Tren de Aragua, the Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco cartel they're not actually at war with the United States. But actually, yes, they are. Actually, they literally are. I mean, the amount of Americans that have died along the U.S.-Mexico border over the past 15, 20 years or so. I mean, frankly, just focusing on the fentanyl issue alone, the amount of Americans who have tragically overdosed and died from fentanyl that's been shipped across the Mexican border there, it's completely sky high there. So invoking this statute, Trump got these 25 Venezuelan nationals, these non-citizens there, and sent them packing to Nayib Bukele down in El Salvador because this binational agreement between the U.S. and El Salvador. The judge tries to stop it, but this is bogus on multiple grounds. One is that the planes were literally in the air with these Venezuelans in them. They actually weren't even over United States airspace. They were over international waters. So good luck, judge, trying to issue your temporary restraining order where it's literally not even in the country anymore. The broader issue, Rita, something that I've been bleeding about for the past 2 months here, this idea that one judge in the United States in our constitutional system has, under the judicial power of which our Constitution speaks, the notion that one judge can just shut down the entire federal government and call it a temporary restraining order is total garbage. That makes the judiciary fundamentally tyrannical branch. It would have struck people everywhere from Thomas Jefferson to Abraham Lincoln as completely antithetical to the separation of powers that alone can protect individual liberty. I am dying for the United States Supreme Court to finally take one of these cases and rule that these so-called nationwide injunctions are here, there, and everywhere unconstitutional. May it happen ASAP.
Hallelujah. Before you go, I want to just play you this little clip from billionaire Reid Hoffman. He was on Stephen Colbert's awful program. He wasn't asked about his dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. That would have been interesting. But he was asked to essentially slam Elon Musk.
But government and companies are not the same. Right. The way that you're running governments shouldn't be the same way you're running companies.
Do you know what Mussolini?
We want government efficiency.
Yes.
But obviously, we could do it in a much less cruel and much more lawful manner.
What do you make of Reid Hoffman's take on things?
Rita, I know that I don't really care what Reid Hoffman has to say. It's frankly my take when it comes to all things Reid Hoffman. I mean, this is a guy who's obviously made a lot of money in the private sector there. Guess what? That doesn't mean that his opinions about anything other than the company that he created are worth particularly a lot there. I mean, Bill Gates, same example there. You know, these guys are just so high on their own supply because they managed to strike the jackpot and win the lottery once when it comes to one investment there. They think that they therefore have all the solutions for everything that ails the entire world. Well, you know who's also created very high worth, very valuable companies? Oh yeah, a guy by the name of Elon Musk, who last I checked is actually the wealthiest man in the world there. I think that he probably has a thing or two to say, that is Elon Musk, when it comes to trying to help streamline operations, makes things more efficient, cut costs, cut waste, and oh, by the way, do all of that in a way that is actually wildly popular, because again, the American people don't want to be subsidizing sex change operations in Myanmar. They don't want to be subsidizing DEI in the Congo. These are common sense things, whether or not Reid Hoffman, who is so high in his own supply that he can't see his own rear end, whether or not he wants to admit it there. But you know what? He's wrong. Elon Musk is right. The American people stand with Elon Musk, and they will continue to stand with Elon Musk and Doge.
Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Rita.